What's up, love giants? Welcome back for another great episode. Hang tight because we got a good guest for you. All right, welcome back. Good to see you. Some people will be joining us as we go. This is a live show. We're live streaming across, I think, 6 or 7 platforms. And we've got another great guest today. Do we have any announcements?
No.
We're Facebook official.
We're Facebook official, people. If it's not Facebook official, it's not official, even though we've been
official.
Pretty official.
We've been official.
For a while.
Just announced it. So, and I got her a candy ring.
Yeah.
Which adds to the candy.
Which adds to the candy
right?
pot
That's
we
big
got here.
time.
It is big time. We're moving right
He
up.
just loves sweetening me up.
So should we introduce our guest?
Yeah.
Should we dive into it? Ryan Morris.
Hi, Ryan.
What's up, dude? You got the Facebook user. What's up? We got laughy faces. We're all around. We're going to have fun tonight. So tonight we are thrilled to introduce a voice that resonates with the power of transformation. Bonnie Roberts, the self-talk Sherpa, is here to guide us on an empowering journey to unlock our inner giants. With her unique blend of passion and expertise, Bonnie has become a beacon of self-empowerment, teaching the art of self-talk as a pathway to self-knowledge, self-love, and self-leadership. As a devoted soccer mom and an avid adventure seeker, her life story is a canvas of resilience painted with the vibrant colors of poetry and the spirit of exploration. So whether you're navigating the complex roles of family life or seeking the thrill of your next adventure, Bonnie's insights promise to inspire and uplift. And for those curious about the whispers of their own minds, Bonnie's How Mean Is Your Inner Critic quiz is a gift not to be missed. So we'll talk about that later on. So let's dive into the landscape of our minds and discover the secrets of living a giant life. Welcome to the show, Bonnie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Was that a good intro? I just made that up. Just
that makes me feel like so cool, like so much.
Does it?
Ryan's
chronicling his love for us people, so that's awesome. We got hey. You guys are so darn cute together. All three of us.
Aww.
Who is that?
Who is our Facebook user? Reveal yourself.
I like the way you cleaned the ring out. I did do the cleanup.
Wow.
It needed it.
You paid attention, Hugh.
That's awesome.
Was it that bad before?
No.
It was a little more disco.
A little the music. Yes. Way better. Yeah. Well, let's dive in. You know, we're all about relationship. We're navigating a new relationship. We're being very vulnerable about sharing all of it. Mm-hmm. So the good, the ugly, all of it.
And
there's not very much
the
ugly.
Facebook official.
The Facebook official.
So
when it comes to relationship,
just seeing you together, seeing you on the posts, and it inspires me. It's like, I want a relationship like that. So thank you for modeling
that's awesome.
This beautiful love that you have and being so vulnerable with it.
Thank you. We don't even have an offer. We're just doing this.
Yeah.
Go to www.loveguru.com. Yeah, we don't have anything like that. So we're just sharing. And the hope really, I think, is to inspire people in their own journeys, whatever that looks like. And, we're taking it one step at a time. We don't know, like anybody else, you don't know how a relationship's going to go. You create it as you go. And so our commitment is to create that. And so what do you think a relationship is? Like, let's start there. Does that work? Like, what is a relationship?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
okay.
It goes back. It's so deep. It goes back to it always goes back to your relationship with yourself. Okay. And most people don't get that who we are is multiple. And our identity is made up in our psyche is made up of so many different parts that are all in relationship with each other all day long. Those parts are talking to each other. They're in conflict with each other sometimes, and that's when we have conflicts and hang-ups in our life. They collaborate with each other. There's so many. It's constant. And the
Like
function of our
cricket
imagination,
and something else on the other side.
yes, yes, and they have coalitions with each other. Like it goes so deep. And then our parts have parts of their own. Like
Well, let's dive into that, because that is internal family systems, is what I
yes.
hear, and I'm familiar with that. And
Oh,
so
you are.
we can play with this for a
Yeah.
bit, because it's and these parts were developed through development and through life as protectors, right? And some are exiled, and so
Yes.
let's
Wow,
look.
you do know your
So
stuff.
I do, and Richard Schwartz is the guy that created it, right? So
Yep. Yep.
it's an awesome program, like theory, philosophy. I think it's beautiful. So when you think of parts, like we all have internal parts, different parts that were developed, almost like different characters, almost like different personalities, right?
Yeah. You could call them sub personalities. Some people do.
Yeah.
I
Cues
don't
are
think
normal,
multiple
right?
personality is a disorder. It's just
Yeah.
it's gotten so extreme that people notice that it's gotten really noticeable. But we all have these multiple personalities, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And they're designed to protect us, and when they get in the way, that's a challenge. And they're so paradoxical the way they work. It's like, I want to
Right.
protect you, but I'm going to create harm to protect you, because I think that's going to hurt less than the actual harm.
Exactly. And have you guys seen Encanto?
Encanto, yes. Yeah.
I think it's the best representation of this model I have ever seen. And I've
Okay.
taught workshops on Encanto because it's so perfect. So you know how Bruno is hiding in the walls of the house? Spoiler alert, but I'm sure.
Yeah.
Hopefully everyone understands.
Dang it.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's ruined.
You haven't? Oh,
No, I haven't. But now I need to.
you need to go watch it, and it's
We don't
I'm
talk
not gonna
about
spoil the
I'll be like,
ending.
oh, I remember her was talking about Bruno.
Yeah, we don't
I
talk
know he
about
is.
Bruno.
We don't talk about Bruno.
Oh,
So
no.
if you imagine that the family is just one person and all the family members are their parts, and Casita,
yeah.
the house, is the body. Okay. And I can go so deep with this, but basically
let's
that's
do
all.
it. But,
Yeah.
well, let's do it, because it really matters when an individual is working with another person. A lot of times they're working with the other person's parts.
Yes.
Well, okay, that sounds dirty.
Nice.
That too.
That came out.
But it's these protectors and protectors coming together, and that makes it really hard to create relationship, right?
So have you heard about the firefighters and the managers?
Go ahead. Yep.
So
Sure.
so if you take the word, so
Yep.
you know about protectors, if you break protectors down, they fall into the categories of managers and firefighters. So the managers are proactive parts that are always trying to do something, right? The firefighters are reactive parts that just want to calm the situation down and keep the exiles from spilling their pain all over everything. So
Explain the
exiles.
exiles. Yeah.
Exiles are Bruno, but there's also young Abuela was an exile because of her trauma. And young Mirabel was an exile when she was 5 years old, and she had her trauma of not belonging in the family. But Bruno is the most obvious exile. And so he hides himself. He takes himself away to try to help the family not he thought that he was causing the problem in the family. So, but he couldn't leave the house because your parts are in your body and they can't go anywhere, right? So even though we exile certain parts and say, oh, that's not who I am, they're still in there, right? And they're still carrying their burdens and their pain. And every once in a while, we meet someone who triggers us, and it activates the exile. And then we freak out, and our firefighters try to calm the situation down by giving us here, eat this food, eat these donuts, or watch Netflix, or go shopping. And so these firefighters tend to be addictions that are meant to keep us from feeling our pain so that we don't act out in the world, right?
I think it reminds me of Dumbo, the clowns, right? That's how they seem to operate. What were you going to say?
Oh, it's funny about that, because we were talking at dinner today, like about, something Sunshine said about, what we irritates us and seeing us in other people, or seeing in other people, is something that we have
Yes,
in ourselves.
exactly.
And I said, well, I get irritated with this person. Why is that? Because I don't see myself as that. And so Nick said, it's because that's something you've exiled out of you. You've recognized you've had these moments or whatever, and you've exiled it out of you. So it irritates you to see that in another person, you know? And then, she had talked on Alan's podcast about, the addiction and stuff, and where we are constantly like, just to avoid this or avoid that, we get into these addictions to stop feeling that pain.
Yes.
Just to kind of, and it's a cycle.
Yeah. And I
different things.
You got a dog in the picture. We ain't see.
Actually. What was that?
We saw your dog behind you.
Oh yeah, that's
been there the whole time. That's awesome.
That's Vader.
Aww, cute.
He's a Labradoodle.
He's like, you're talking about me.
Hello.
He keeps me company when I'm home alone. But yeah, I worked with Sunshine on these cards. Actually, I brought these to a party because I'm such a nerd, and I was doing card draws for the people at the party, and some super interesting stuff came up with her. But yeah, these just visually represent different parts. It's hard to see because the glare, but I like to do intuitive card readings on people, and it gets really deep on their parts and what's going on with their archetypes and stuff. So
when it comes to a relationship and you have two people come together, like we come together and we have our own parts going, and we have our exiles, and we have our firefighters, and we have our managers going.
Yep.
And then we come into relationship, they can't help but show up, right?
Yep.
So a lot of times they feel, so when I was single, they were all quiet, like not saying anything. They're quiet.
Nobody was poking the bear.
No,
except for like regular stuff like traffic,
Yeah.
But yeah.
Traffic is like, that's traffic's not fair. That's just not fair. That's a wild card, right? But you get in a relationship and your protectors come up because things in the relationship trigger those parts coming up.
Yes.
And so the opportunity here would be to really look at what's coming up in me and why is this part showing up, and have dialogue with it, right? So the whole purpose of IFS is to have dialogue with these parts. Like in Hugh's case, you probably have that going consistently. I can understand that, and that's a little different. But it's the same idea. It's not different. It's just more vocalized, right? We all have some version of that. So when you have dialogue with these parts, then you can start to really take back your power and not exile them, because their fear is if you exile them, now they get angry and they do this behind the scenes.
Yes.
Right. And so now you got a problem because you're mad at those parts for showing up, and then they don't want to show up because every time they show up, you get mad at them. So they go and hide behind the scenes and cause issues and self-sabotage or create self-fulfilling prophecy. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why, so I teach 3 pillars in my coaching. And the first pillar is self-understanding. You have to get in there and see what's going on with your exiles, how your managers are dealing with the situation, how your firefighters are coming. You have to know what's going on in there, and you have to talk to them and figure out, like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you constantly criticizing everyone in your life all the time? What is to be gained by this, right? Or whatever it is. And once you understand the reasons why these parts of yourselves are showing up this way, it's a lot easier to love and accept these parts of yourself. I had this really arrogant princess part for a while that was so snotty. Whenever I would get rejected by a man, this part of me was like, well, he's just stupid, because can't he see that I'm just so much better than her? And oh my gosh, and so I was like, where is this coming from? This isn't me. And I realized that when I talked to this part, I said, why are you doing this? Why are you showing up this way? I know I'm not really an arrogant person, but these thoughts are, really arrogant. And this part said, well, do you remember 10 years ago when you felt worthless? And do you remember when you would drive recklessly in the canyon and you didn't care about your safety? Do you remember when you used to be so hurt because your husband didn't love you that you would go out in the middle of Midvale and walk around by yourself at midnight? And oh yeah, okay, I'm remembering that now. And it said, I'm trying to protect you because I don't want you to feel worthless. So I'm trying to make you feel better than everybody so that you don't feel worse than everybody and go back to that dark place. And I was like, and the light bulb went off, like, oh, it's just trying to help me and keep me safe. And then I was able to to help this part of me realize, I've got it. You don't have to do this because I'm okay now. I'm not in that place that I was in 10 years ago. And you can trust me and you don't need to give me this arrogant stuff. It's going to be okay. And then that part, I gave it a new job. I gave it the job of noticing awesome things about other people, because it's really good about like pointing out how awesome I am. So I said, instead of pointing out like how much better than everyone I am, can you point out how awesome all these other people are? I was like, ooh, yes, a new job. And then that like tempered that instinct, right? And then I was able to connect with people more easily, because then I would go tell them what I noticed about them. And
Yeah.
it changed it just changed my whole world, right? And so this kind of work can be so powerful. So there's self-understanding first, then self-love, because I realized, oh, I love this part of myself that cares about me, right? The third pillar is self-leadership. So when we can get all of our parts to trust the self with a capital S, have you heard of that, Nick?
Go ahead, like share
Self
more.
with a capital S is my favorite thing about IFS, because it's the deepest, truest, highest part of you. It's not a part. It's like the witness behind all the.
That's the core, right? So like in our other show, the Wake Up with Giants TV, we talk about the giant. Like that's the giant. Like that's your highest version of you, right?
Yes.
So it sees everything.
And it doesn't have a job. So this part is Maribel from Encanto, because she doesn't have a gift, but her greatest strength is her connection with every single person in the family, and she holds them all together, and she's the leader. Like, she is the true leader, not Abuela.
I'm gonna have to re-watch that whole movie. Like
yes,
it's like Inside Out, right?
Yeah, that's why it's making Inside Out.
Yeah, there's so many little symbols, like the butterfly and the candle, and like it's just so deep.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Mirabel is the true leader of the family, not Abuela. Abuela was trying to make everybody perfect so that the family would be approved of. She's a manager, but she's not the true leader, right? And so sometimes we have that manager that's like, oh, we have to appear perfect so that everyone will love us and accept us, and that we'll be okay.
For sure.
But that's not the truth.
What do you think?
Was Abuela more like the ego, you think?
Yeah. And a lot of people talk about the ego in ways that I don't think are helpful. Or the inner critic, they talk about silencing the inner critic. Now, Abuela is definitely a critic character. But she's very wise, and she's got a lot of good insight. And so we need to listen to our inner critic and acknowledge it and show appreciation to it, but not let it run all over us, right? And so that's really the task when it comes to the inner critic. Let it be like a soccer coach, and advise us without letting it. The coach is not going to get in there and play the game, right?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that our primary relationship is first with ourselves, right? And so the internal family systems puts it in a point of view, almost metaphorically, where you can start to see these parts as people, as relationships, just like you would have on the external. And then you get into the world of Inside Out, and it teaches you about emotions, right? The emotional side. So these parts all have their own emotions too, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And so I know in research, they can find that people with multiple personalities can actually have completely different biological states as well.
Right.
Like their whole physiology changes. And so
Yeah.
it's these parts come up and they show up with their own set of emotions. But the thing that stays consistent is that core self, that S, self with an S, that can observe it all. But a lot of us don't know that. We think our parts are us. And so we show up in relationship, we show up any kind of relationship, right? Work, partnerships. It shows up everywhere because it's all inside of you. Like wherever you go, there you are. Right?
Yes. Yeah. And the thing that most people don't get is that your parts have access to your body and can control your immune system. So whether you get sick, if you get sick a lot, it's probably because there's a part that's using that. It's like, oh, well, they're not resting enough, so I'm going to make them get sick so that they'll stay in bed. Or even give people terminal diseases like cancer. I worked with someone who had cancer, and we found out what the cancer was trying to say and how it was trying to protect her, and it was fascinating. It was fascinating the way the cancer really thought it was helping. And so when you get in there and you see these relationships and what's going on in there, I think it's the most interesting thing in the world.
So what would the reboot be? Like if we did a reboot on relationship, if we've developed, I'll just play for a second and then we'll run with it. If you're in a relationship and you've had experiences in the past, and let's say you had a pretty healthy upbringing, and so you never had really many protector parts because life was pretty easy. Yeah. But then you get in a relationship that is traumatizing, difficult, beats you up, right? And then from that relationship, you develop some of these parts, these protectors. So when you go into a new relationship, these protectors start screaming at the new relationship. They're like, this might be going on. And then it'd be easy to project that on a partner as though they're creating that. And I think I've done that, like even in ours, right? Like,
well, I would say like where you have had things surface, like we haven't gone in many, I mean, I can't even say fights. It would be more like heavier discussions, right?
Yeah.
And two, maybe, if that.
Yeah.
And you recognize it and you're just out there and going, I don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't know why. But he had to stop and think and think and think. And then he realized in talking about it, he's like, well, this is where I came from. And I felt like I've kind of been a yes man and I need to choose for myself instead of just please.
Yeah.
And I'm going to listen to what I want and I don't want to do this. But I mean, he worked through that and he really saw the logic in it. He was allowing this stubbornness to drive the bus. And
it happens.
You know, he was allowing that. And it was like 24 hours, you know?
Well, and it came up so immediate.
Yeah, and he didn't understand why.
Like there was this immediate response of, I don't want to do that. Right. But it was a, the impact over here with Andy was like, it was impactful. It was like, what do you mean you don't want to do that? It wasn't like, I need you to do that. Let me manipulate you into doing that. It was, well, that really matters to me. And I shut it down, like, because of one of my protector parts. So I had to sit with, where did this even come from? Because it happened before, like, it's snappy almost, right? It's so fast.
It was like an instant, nope.
Right?
Yeah. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I spent days like processing and going through it. It's like, where did that come from? Why? Is there really a reason? Or is this my protector parts showing up, just trying to stop what they think is going on, right?
Yes.
Which wasn't the case, but they thought if we do this, then this will soften the pain of that, because that's way more painful than what we're going to do to you. And it's like, you guys are idiots, because what you're going to do to me is going to hurt, right? But you think because it hurts less than the other that it's better for me. Right. Well, it was painful, but we navigated
We
it.
navigated. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was a
So-
process, and it was a lot of talking about it. And he had to kind of sit with it over the evening and night. And then, it was a process, and I saw him work through that. And there's a lot of communication. I had to, say, this is how it makes me feel. And this is where I see it. And yeah, we had to work through that. But I grew up from a pretty healthy family, and I'm the only one that's been divorced in my family. And, I look at my first marriage and I see my errors. I recognize them. And I don't know if it was parts or what, where you look back and you go, where did I go wrong? And you recognize where you go wrong. And then those parts decide to overcompensate and the next.
Yeah.
And ignore flags, ignore all the
right?
flames coming out of flags. And they ignored it because they thought, well, you were too harsh here. So ignore it. Don't look at it.
Your inner critic.
After a while, you can't. You're in it. Up to your knees.
Or neck.
Yeah.
Or neck. Yeah. It was knees first month.
It's like the inner critic shut down the perceiver that could really the truth of the situation.
Yeah, kind of, right?
Yeah. So there's an awesome process called the conversation for getting through. And I've seen it change relationships in half an hour, right? And so in this process, I actually haven't even thought about this for so long, but basically you get really clear on not what the person is saying, but what you're hearing. You make sure they know what you're hearing them say. So like if she says, pick up your socks, they're always on the floor. Okay, she said something, right? But like Nick, if she said that to you, what might you hear that's not in those words?
You'd be like, oh, I hear my mom.
Yeah, maybe.
Right.
Or, like,
Would
I
you
don't
hear
even
like
wear pink socks.
thinks I'm a slob or something like that?
Well, yeah, no, I would definitely have some self-judgment come up, right?
Yeah.
In relation to what I heard her say.
Slob, but you'd say,
right.
oh, I'm a slob, right?
Right. And there are other versions of that, right?
Yeah.
Socks is just a simplified.
There's infinite versions of it. Or if he tells her, every time you go to Target, you spend $200 that we don't have, right? If he said that to you, Andy, what might you hear that he didn't say?
Well, I'd probably be like, what? I don't know. Like, I think I'd probably feel like he's telling me I can't spend anything, but really his intent would be like, he's putting me in, or he's controlling. And he's probably like, we're in the deficit here. Like, can you slow it down? I'm concerned. We got to look at this. But I could be hearing he's controlling me. He doesn't appreciate what I'm grabbing from the store. He's a jackass.
But when we don't talk about it, and one person's hearing, oh, they think I'm a slob, and the other person's thinking, oh, they're controlling me. Are you going to have a good relationship?
No, because you're hearing from those. Yeah.
But you just assume that that's true. Like you just think that's true. And until you get in there and, okay, what did you just hear me say? Right. And until you actually do that process, then there's just so many assumptions going on that you had no idea that the other person was assuming that. Right.
Yeah.
That's why feedback is good. Like, even just at dinner again.
Yeah, we do that. Like she'll say something and then I'll just
get this look on his face and I'll say, do you want me to explain what?
And then I want to clarify
where I'm coming from or what I mean by what I just said.
But then I'll say, this is what I hear in that. So let me make sure I'm hearing you correctly. And so I'll feedback what I'm hearing and then we'll navigate it that way.
I
but
love
that takes slowing down with the conversation. Because I think in the past, there were times that I was very reactionary, very emotionally immature when it came to that. And I would act from my reactions, my emotions. And so I've learned over the years to just really slow down and listen from the other person's point of view, even if I don't see it from their point of view.
Yes.
Like, even if I don't agree with it, I want to know where you're coming from when you say what you say.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to put agreement. We just want to agree or disagree right away, but you have to put that aside.
Right.
And just be really present. And that's not easy to do. It's really difficult.
Yeah. We had a lot of those conversations even at the beginning where, I have different beliefs than he has. And ultimately, when I explain my, I'm sad. And I had to explain my point of view. The bottom line was, I love him.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm coming from. I'm not judging. I'm this and that. Certain things make me sad.
Yeah.
And it's more out of love. So he understands. She feels this way because she's so crazy about me. More than I am of her.
Not anymore. I'm more crazy about her.
Just kidding.
And
So-
some people,
That's an inside joke.
Some people, when they're not secure in themselves, they'll see their partner sad and they'll think, oh, they're unhappy with me. They're mad at me. There's something wrong with me. I did something wrong. And they'll just assume that instead of, honey, what's going on? And so it's really interesting because some people won't even ask the question because they don't really want to know.
There's a good quote here. I won't pull it up because it's big, but I'll read it. And I don't know who said this, so we'll have to go back and look. But it says, slowing down is at the crux. At times, I feel the ability to successfully manage IFS is a privilege reserved for those who have the luxury of time. Money and or time creates space to better manage parts. When you're tracking or tackling the lower levels on the hierarchy of needs, it's really hard to fit in inner work. So you default to your lowest, most controlling part to manage the daily stress in your relationships. So how do you navigate that? That's
Wow.
solid. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Facebook.
that's where self-care really comes in, because it's your responsibility to make sure you're getting your sleep and you're getting your nutrition and you're lowering your stress. Because if you can't show up your best, then you're going to show up, the worst parts of you are going to come out and interact with your partner, right? And if you're single and you're not taking care of yourself, the worst parts of yourself are going to interact with.
They do.
Your vibration is going to be, stay away because I'm overwhelmed and I can't handle anything more. So just stay away. And you'll be putting out this vibration that pushes everybody else away when you want to bring people in, right?
You're just trying to keep that canoe from filling full of water and try to survive, taking care of this and forgetting, like, let's try to plug holes up. And
survival mode is scarcity mindset. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and survival mode is survival mode. And we have the luxury in our country, first world countries, to work on this stuff. There was a lady that was in the prison camps in North Korea. When she got out, she came to America. She says that it was easier to be in the prison camps than to deal with her own thoughts. And so she actually had time to sit with her thoughts, right? And so in our country, we do have a lot of time to sit with our thoughts, which is in a way a luxury. So when people are in survival mode, your responsibility is to manage the survival and take care of those essential needs, right? And try not to create more damage with whatever's going on emotionally inside of that, because it could be easy to project that over on somebody else, because it is hard, right?
Yeah. But I don't know very many people who really sit with their thoughts in silence, without having music on, without having a podcast on, without having Netflix on, like without being around other people. How many people actually stay home on a Friday night alone and just be sad and just let themselves be sad without eating all the ice cream, right?
Right.
People don't actually feel their feelings. They distract, they're addicted. And if you just let yourself feel your feelings for even an hour, like put on a song that makes you cry and just let yourself cry. What I like to do is put on rage music and beat up my couch with a bat. And when I do that intentionally, usually I just do it at concerts now.
Yeah.
But when I do that intentionally,
I'm glad you're not hitting anything during the concerts.
Right.
You play in front of you.
Oh yeah.
You show up with a bat.
There's a
we
reason
Else
got-
I
we
get
got
beat in the
issues.
head.
Yeah, there's a reason
Yeah.
I do the rage process when I'm by myself. Yeah. But when you get that out of your system very intentionally, then it won't come out just as you're going about your day, because
And you get a new couch.
yeah, because you you've gotten it out, and it's not going to get all over anybody else. It won't hurt anyone.
And they can't use the word "it's been loved to death." The couch. Hate it.
Good thing my furniture's crappy anyway.
But the idea there is very valid. So in our training program, we do the 12 journeys, and we talk about the importance of acknowledging and feeling the sensations and the feelings, the emotions. Sometimes it's really hard to even name the emotions, because we think we've named the emotion, but it's really not that emotion. It's something else, but we think it's that emotion. So we go to work on it because we've labeled it.
Yes.
But it's not really it. So we had a guest on accelerated resolution therapy, and it was phenomenal because she talked about feeling the sensations more than the emotions. So what are the sensations of feeling sad? So Andy calls me up. She's like, "Hey, I'm going to go to a concert. You want to go to a concert?" And I can say, "Nope, I'm going to stay home and feel the sensations of feeling sad on a Friday night, because that's exciting."
Say, well, have fun.
I'm just kidding. I'm going to go to the concert. But
our culture doesn't encourage that behavior.
Yeah.
Right? It says, "Oh, there's something wrong with you for wanting to do that," right?
Right.
When in fact it's so healthy.
I think it is, because it expresses it. It gets it out. I had a splinter in my finger and I couldn't get it out. It was under the skin and it was in there for weeks. And it finally came out, and it's such a relief. And I think that's how it is with emotions.
Yeah.
I mean, you could try to bury it. It's still going to be there. And that's what a lot of people do, addictions, things like that, until they, like you said, embrace the suck, feel the feel, recognize it, recognize that is something you just have to deal with, because it's going to be there. So you either do it here or you keep adding on top of it. It's still going to be layers deep. So embrace the suck, accept it. And what can you do with it? I mean, when I was going through things, we all go through things. My friend said, "What's the worst could happen? Like, think of the worst right now. What's the worst?" Because we create a lot of things in our mind, right?
Yes.
And I think, okay, worst case scenarios, I have to sell my house. I have, this and that. And it was the worst case scenario. And I'm here. I've experienced all the worst case scenarios.
Yeah.
But I'm still alive. But I sat there stressing over it. But she's like, just think of the worst case scenario, and anything better is great.
I love that one. That's
so I just, okay, yeah, this I'm going to cry over. I'm going to be sad. I'm going to be stressed. But if that's what's going to be, just accept that. If anything better, then accept that.
Well, so I have a thought around this, because the other part that's important to this is having somebody that can hold space for you to feel your sensations.
Yes.
Right. Yes. And so we've both had emotions come up. We've both had sensations come up. We've had thoughts come up. We've had insecurities show up. And so for us, we've been able to hold space and just talk that through. Now, I get we're fresh into this. We're only 4 months in, roughly, right, into our relationship. But these things are going to come up no matter. And so we're learning to navigate these together, and having somebody that can hold space for that, of, hey, it's okay for you to have what you're having right now. It's okay for you to have the thoughts that you're having, the emotions that you're having. It's understandable that would be coming up in you. It just gives you room to do your work, right?
Yes.
If she was critical and like, get over it, quit being a baby, move on already, why are you still dealing with that? This is so old. I wouldn't bring much.
He wouldn't
to
feel
the conversation.
safe. He wouldn't bring it up.
Stay armored. Yeah.
We wouldn't be together, honestly. Yeah. So
you need a place where you can take off your armor and be vulnerable, so that the next day you could put that armor back on and go out into the world and fight your battles. But when you come home, you need to take that stuff off.
Yeah. but even for ourselves, right? It
Yeah.
starts with ourselves. So like we need to do
Especially
that for
for ourselves.
ourselves, right?
Yes.
We don't give ourselves room to have our emotions, and there's nobody else in the room, right?
Exactly. And that's why we get to cultivate that relationship with that self with a capital S, right?
Yeah.
And in Encanto, Mirabelle has a conversation and connects with every single member of the family. And even the sister she did not want to talk to, she finally had that conversation. They bonded. And then everything was able to get better. You know, the house had started to crack and fall apart, but then they were able to rebuild everything. And it's because Mirabelle was holding space for every single one of those parts and that they felt like they belonged in that family, right?
It's so interesting. Like I'm gonna have to watch that show again.
Yeah. I'm going to stop talking about Encanto now, but oh, there's another show that I thought of when you were talking. Atlas of the Heart. Brene Brown has a series. I think it's on HBO Max called Atlas of the Heart, and she goes through all of the emotions and defines them and talks about them, and it gives you a rich vocabulary for how to label these things that are your inner experiences, and it's just so well done. Highly recommend that. It's like a mini series. Yeah.
We'll have to put that on.
Maybe we'll have to start watching some shows together, right?
Yeah.
Atlas.
Maybe we should start watching more TV.
Right.
If you're gonna watch
So you
TV,
mentioned-
yeah, these are some of the best things you can watch. Yeah.
We both aren't big TV.
Well,
I'm not a big
you are,
yeah,
but I'm not.
yeah.
So
But I always watch like documentaries and ghost shows. So maybe I'll add something more positive. But
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier you had a poem.
Oh,
Would now be a good time to share that?
Yeah. So I'm just a poetry nut. I've got 123 memorized by now, and the highlight of my life was going to Ireland with my favorite poet David White on his Ireland tour. And so I got to meet him and hang out with him for a week. And some of the people on the tour were talking to me in the van one day, and they were asking me about some of their favorite David White poems. Oh, do you have this one memorized? Do you have this one memorized? And they brought up this one called The True Love. And this one is really, really popular. People use it for their wedding vows. It's really special. It's my favorite love poem ever written. And they were asking me if I had it memorized. And I said, you know what? No, I can't bring myself to memorize it because I'm single. And that's my dream. It's about my dream relationship. And it's so hard for me to want to memorize that when I'm not enjoying that blessing. You know what I mean? But then I realized, you know what? I'm not going to be able to create that dream that I want more than anything until I start living in the dream now. Right. So part of that, I realized I needed to memorize that poem, even though it kind of hurt my heart, because I get to start experiencing what I want to create and experiencing it inside myself before I can create that out here. Right. So, all right. So this is The True Love. There is a faith in loving fiercely the one who is rightfully yours, especially if you have waited years, and especially if part of you never believed you could deserve this loved and beckoning hand held out to you this way. I'm thinking of faith and the testaments of loneliness and what we feel we are worthy of in this world. Years ago in the Hebrides, I remember an old man who walked every morning over gray stones to the shore of baying seals, who would clutch his hat to his chest in the blustering salt wind and say his prayer to the turbulent Jesus hidden in the water. And I'm thinking of the story of the storm and everyone waking to see the distant yet familiar figure far across the water calling to them. And how we are all preparing for that abrupt waking and that calling, and the moment you know you have to say yes, accept. It will not come so grandly, so biblically, but more subtly and intimately in the face of the one you know you have to love. So that when you finally step out of the boat towards them, you find everything everything holds our weight, and everything confirms our courage. And if you wanted to drown, you could, but you don't. Because finally, after all these years and all this struggle, you don't want to anymore. You've simply had enough of drowning, and you want to live, and you want to love, and you will cross any territory and any darkness, however fluid and however dangerous, to take the one hand you know belongs in yours.
That's beautiful.
That's
Thanks
awesome.
for sharing that.
I think we just clap here and hang up. So yeah, call it a show.
That's why he's my favorite poet.
That's impressive that you
beautiful.
have so many memorized. That's amazing.
That is super
right?
impressive.
Like
You know what I did this week?
I don't
I
remember.
memorized one in German this week. I don't even speak German.
Holy
Oh,
I was
my
so-
memory. That's awesome.
That's
It
crazy.
just needed to be like, because of the meaning of it, it just had to be in that language, you know?
Yeah, that's amazing.
That is so cool.
Well, so what I hear in all of this is, really start with you,
Yes.
the individual. Start loving you exactly as you are, and start growing you. And be clear on what you would like. I hear that too, is be clear on what you'd like in your relationship, because when that relationship comes along, you'll recognize it, right?
Exactly. And I see
Yeah.
singleness as an opportunity. It's part of the creation. It's not, single people aren't just, well, unless you don't want to be in a relationship, but single people who are looking for that relationship, we're not just sitting around waiting for it to happen. We're creating it now with our thoughts and our feelings. And I've made a whole list of like every man that I've interacted with and the qualities that I appreciate about him, and listed them all out. The things I didn't appreciate, like, oh, he was always late to pick me up for a date, but I didn't focus on the things I didn't like. I used it as a way to show me what I wanted. So, oh, he was always late. What's the opposite of that? Oh, I want someone who's punctual, who makes me feel important, who respects me and my time. And then I focus on, okay, this is what I'm putting out there. I want someone who is respectful of me and my time and is punctual. So I put my focus always on everything I want. And the more experiences I have with different men, the more opportunities I have for that clarity. And now I can get super, super dialed in and specific on what I want. And I wouldn't have that opportunity if someone just came along and fell into my lap, right? I wouldn't have the opportunity to create the relationship of my dreams actively, right? And
if it came along and you weren't clear, you might miss it. You might miss it if it did come along, right?
I wouldn't. And in that poem, I love how it talks about you finally recognize, yes, this is what I've been wanting all along. And if you hadn't had all those years without it, then you wouldn't be so excited and grateful and appreciative when you do have it, right? Yeah. And it just bonds you to a much higher level than you could have. You would just take it for granted if you hadn't had all these other experiences first, right?
Yeah. We had an interesting conversation today. Can I share this a little bit?
Yeah.
About potential, right? That when you look at a partner, some people look for potential. I'm like, I don't think that's the way to look at it, because what
Everybody
I look for, everybody has potential, but what I look for is consistency. Is someone I can count on to be the same everywhere. Like they're the
who they
same
currently
person
are.
here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, more
potential,
potential.
right?
Right.
You can count on them. Yeah.
You can count on them. You can trust when they say something, that's what's going to show up in the world. And so, you know, and that's one thing that I've appreciated about our relationship is the consistency. That what you see on social media is what you'll see if you come join us for a day behind the scenes. It's not any different, right? And so that consistency is super refreshing. And I've been in relationships where it is chaos behind the scenes, right? Yeah. Not fun. And so it's not, you know, that's where I started to get clear on what do I want in a relationship. And a lot of it came from the relationships that weren't so fun, right? Yeah. I don't want to go through that again. And so, and I also recognize my contribution to every relationship, you know, and so it just, I appreciate that I have consistency in a relationship and in a partner, and I have a place to be consistent in a relationship with a partner.
And taking responsibility for what's yours is huge.
Yeah.
Huge. He does recognize, like, we both, like, we know we have past experiences, and when something has come up, you're like, this is how I'm feeling, but it's not yours.
Yeah.
This is not yours to own. I'm just things that, like, if you're not in a relationship, it's not going to come up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When things come up, it will come up in a relationship, because that's the opportunity, you know, where those things you could take and you could say, here you go, take my luggage. He says, no, this is where I'm feeling, just let you know, I'm not handing it to you. It's not yours. This is something I'm reflecting on, pondering on, whatever, dealing with, and it's not yours to own. And I love that. He doesn't give me his backpack full of pebbles.
Yeah.
Boulders.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the law of projection, what's cool about it is everything and everyone is a mirror to us if we're conscious of that. Any experience, any person, anything in the world can show us something about ourselves. And so we just get to open our eyes and look and be aware of it. It's cool.
Yeah, and to ask the questions, why is this coming up in me? Where's this coming from? What's the source? Is this, you know, if there is a disagreement in the relationship, like what's coming up in me around this disagreement, right?
Yeah.
And how can I not project my stuff over there where it doesn't belong? And if we need to talk about it, we'll talk about it. We'll be assertive and talk about it. But for the most part, most of my discomfort comes up in me, like it's mine, 100%, right?
Yeah.
So.
And most people don't know what the greatest key to intimacy is. And it's huge. But when you're focusing on all this negative stuff that you don't want, you can never experience true intimacy. And so when you talk about the things that light you up, the things that you love the most, and when you share that with another person and can be in their eyes and you're both talking about what makes your heart sing and what you're grateful for and what you're appreciative of, that is how you create intimacy. That's how you actually travel your souls. It's really deep and really cool. So it's like, I'm looking for someone who can go deep on a soul level and can be like radically present. And there's really not very many people out there that can do that.
Yeah, radically present.
I like that.
I'm pretty radical.
Pretty radical.
Do you know what the word radical means?
Go ahead and clarify. I think I do, but
let's hear what you think.
He's a word geek.
Like radical is extreme to one side of something, like radicalized. Well, it would be like any kind of political view where it's like in politics, if that were the example, it would just be the extreme version of something, right?
That's
to the max. Okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm open.
So can you think of a vegetable that starts out like the word radical?
Radish.
Radish. What kind of a vegetable is a radish?
A yucky one.
It's extreme.
It is like bite back.
What part of the plant?
Root. The root.
The root. Radical actually means from the root.
Huh.
It's like the foundational, it's the very basic, the bottom, the the core, that kind of thing. And it's taken on this whole other meaning, but I'm just a big nerd about etymology and words.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But
Yeah, we'll
That's one
go
we
off,
haven't gotten
except
into.
I don't have that word yet.
Yeah.
So there we go. That's good. I
Oh,
think, yeah, go ahead.
no, finish your thought.
Well, just the root, you get to the root, the core of people. So when you talk, I like that idea, that view of radical, right? Is you're really getting to the core, the root of somebody. And it's what's at the core that tends to express. And so the roots dictate and help the health of the plant, right? If the roots are unhealthy, the plant won't grow. And so it's stunted. And so getting to the root is really getting to the core with somebody. That's how I hear this, is the ability to go, like you say, deep
Below the surface.
below the surface, right? And really have somebody that can hang with you in that darker space where it is hard, it is difficult, it is challenging. There are judgments and justifications and reasons for all the things that we do. But to be able to navigate that with somebody is that's part of the vulnerability. That's something we've been able to do, like from the beginning, is talk deep, right? So even to the point, like our first date at a restaurant, we're talking and she starts crying at the table, and the guy's like, "Ma'am, are you okay?" Like I just
like he was hurting me.
Aww.
but we were talking so deep, like the emotions came up, right? And so, but that's how I like to roll. That's how you roll. And
the foundation.
Yeah.
That's one thing I loved. Just one of many things is our in-depth conversations. Just amazing conversation with you. You had me at combo.
You had me at
so
combo. That's why rabbit holes are so cool, right?
Don't even get me started on rabbit holes, because I've got my whole yard full of them with my rabbits.
We'll go down the rabbit hole.
Well, if we're about 4 minutes away here, and that went really fast. It
really did.
A great conversation. I would wonder if there was a question that you wish you were asked during the show. What would that be, and how would you answer it?
Question. Just maybe what I would recommend someone do as the next step when they're dealing with these extreme parts inside themselves. Like what do you do at that point? How do you get better? Right?
That's a great question. Yep. Yeah.
How do you navigate all the parts?
What would you say to them?
And that's a big question, but I always recommend that people don't start with their exiles. Remember, the exiles are the guys that carry the pain and trauma. Don't start with those. Like, it's easy for people to get caught in these cycles in therapy where they're dealing with their exiles, and then they start blaming their parents for the way they were brought up and all of this stuff. And it's not helpful. It's not helpful. So don't start there. Go to your managers first. And I recommend start with your inner critic, because that one's the easiest one to notice when it's just easy to become aware of it, because it's so obvious. It's like, you suck. I can't believe you did that. Oh my gosh, you're so stupid. Like, it's easy to pick up on it when we're paying attention. And then you can start to go, oh, it's interesting that you're talking to me like this. Why are you doing that? And we can start to do the work there and unravel what's going on. And as you get that inner critic to back off, it helps your exiles, not directly, but it helps them indirectly, until you're able to deal with their pain and their trauma, right? Yeah. And so I actually have a quiz that I think is really fun called How Mean is Your Inner Critic? And it has 13 questions that just ask you about like different things that come up in your head when there's when certain things happen to you in your life. Like, what are your thoughts? What are your knee-jerk reactions to what happened? And then it'll give you a result of 4 different archetypes that your inner critic could be expressing as we would have to work one-on-one to really get in there and know what your archetypes are. But it's a good way to look at what's going on in there in a fun way. And then I give some suggestions for how you can up-level your self-talk, because no matter where you are, you can always improve it and go to the next level. I have some resources on there. So I think the link for that is in the show notes, but you can just look up bit.ly
in the description.
Hyphen between inner critic and quiz. So that is a free gift that I have for everyone. So I hope
That's
it helps
awesome.
you.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Do you have final thoughts?
No, we really enjoyed visiting with you.
Thanks.
Yes,
for
this
sharing.
is so fun.
Yeah, it's good. Thank you. I gotta go watch Encanto now.
Yeah, now we know what we're gonna veg to tonight.
Encanto, Atlas of the Heart. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me know.
And the Atlas of the Heart, right?
Yeah, we'll binge watch all of it.
Let's talk
Yes.
after.
Yeah, all night.
Cool.
Can I come over?
Right.
Party.
So for those that are watching, thank you again for being here. We love your comments. Lori all the way in Canada, Hugh down in Arizona. We got just a great community here. And so thank you for being a part of this.
I love you so much. It's awesome.
And so for those that are watching, we'll be here next week. Next week we don't have a guest, so it'll be back to just us for a week. And then we'll bring on more guests as we move forward. If there's somebody that you'd like us to sit with, let us know, because we're looking for experts in relationship and in different areas that can coach all of us, right? Because we all need it. So
I know some people. Yeah, I can send them your way.
That's awesome. Yeah, we'll have fun with it. So thank you for being a part of this. Thanks for watching our relationship and supporting us in this endeavor. And go make it a great evening.
Yeah.
Thanks for all of the great stuff you're putting out there.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, guys. Have a good night. We'll see you next week.